The phone rang, its sharp tone breaking the quiet of an otherwise normal Tuesday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, looking out the window at the early sun rising over the quiet neighborhood. I had no idea that the call I was about to receive would change everything in a way I could never have imagined. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar. "Mr. Thomas?" the woman asked. "This is Nurse Kelly at Riverside Medical in California. We need you to come as soon as possible. It's urgent." I froze. My heart sank into my stomach. I was no stranger to bad news, but this felt different. My daughter, Rachel, my only child, had been living out in California for the past 5 years. She had gotten away from everything back home, found herself in a nonprofit job, and was starting over after a difficult divorce. "Is Rachel okay?" I managed to say, my voice thick with fear. There was a pause. "She's stable for now, but Mr. Thomas, you need to get here immediately. She's in critical condition." "Critical?" I asked, my chest tightening. "What happened?" "We don't have all the details yet, but she's unconscious. I'm afraid it's serious." The words blurred together as I struggled to process them. Rachel had always been strong. Sure, she had gone through some tough times. Her marriage to Mark had been a mess from the start, but she was starting to turn things around. She couldn't be in critical condition. Not my daughter. "I'll be there as soon as I can. I'm booking a flight now." I hung up and quickly ran to the living room, my hands shaking as I grabbed my phone. I didn't have time to pack a suitcase, so I tossed a few essentials in a duffel bag. There was no time for questions, no time for anything except getting to California and finding out what was going on. As I booked the flight, my mind raced. What could have happened? Rachel had always been the strong one, the fighter. She had made a life for herself out there, a life away from the chaos that had defined her marriage. But now she was alone, unconscious, fighting for her life in a hospital room, while I was stuck here, thousands of miles away, feeling completely powerless. When I landed at LAX, the city felt foreign to me. The bright lights, the hustle and bustle, it all felt so far removed from the quiet suburban life I knew back home. I hailed a cab immediately, giving the driver the hospital address. I had to get there. I had to find Rachel. I couldn't lose her. As the cab sped through the streets, my thoughts kept drifting back to Mark, Rachel's ex-husband. He had been the one who left her in the first place, the one who couldn't be bothered to fight for their family. It hadn't been easy for Rachel, but she had moved on. So why wasn't Mark here by her side? Why was I the one rushing to the hospital while he was nowhere to be found? The cab pulled up to Riverside Medical. I barely even registered the sound of the engine shutting off as I paid the driver and rushed inside. The sterile smell of the hospital hit me as soon as I stepped through the doors. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked, her voice calm but distant. "I'm here for my daughter, Rachel Thomas. She's in ICU," I said, my voice strained with worry. "Yes, Mr. Thomas. Room 42C. She's in critical condition. Please be aware she's under sedation." I nodded and made my way toward the elevators, trying to steady my breath. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I reached the ICU floor and was directed to Rachel's room. When I entered, my heart dropped. There she was, pale, lifeless, hooked up to machines. My daughter, the girl I had watched grow up, was lying there in that bed looking like a shell of the person I knew. Her chest rose and fell with the beeping of the machines, but the woman I knew, the one who had fought so hard for her independence, was gone. The nurse who was standing nearby gave me a sympathetic look. "She stabilized her, but we're not sure what caused this. Her body's in shock." I stood there, unable to speak. This wasn't how I imagined my reunion with Rachel would be. This wasn't how it's supposed to go. "Where's Mark?" I asked, my voice tight. "Her husband, why isn't he here?" The nurse glanced at the floor, hesitant. He's out of town, sir. On a yacht with some friends. They're celebrating a new business deal." I felt my blood run cold. A yacht? While Rachel lay here alone and unconscious, her husband was off partying on a yacht. This wasn't just neglect, it was a betrayal of the highest order. I couldn't just sit here and let this happen. I knew what I had to do. If Mark wasn't going to be here for Rachel, then I was going to step in. And if he thought he could escape the consequences of his actions, he was sorely mistaken. As I sat in the waiting room, my mind raced with anger, disbelief, and something darker. Mark had betrayed Rachel in the worst way possible. And that meant it was time for me to take action. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. I stood up, my fists clenched, ready to do whatever it took. Rachel was going to make it through this, and when she did, Mark was going to pay for abandoning her when she needed him the most. Now that the stakes have been set, what will happen next? The first twist is coming, and it's about to turn everything upside down. Stay tuned to find out how the plan unfolds, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next shocking moment in the story. I sat in the hospital waiting room, the sterile smell of antiseptic and the soft hum of fluorescent lights doing little to ease the churning storm inside me. Rachel was still unconscious, her condition unstable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I looked at my phone again. No messages from Mark, not even a missed call. He had to know what was happening. And yet, there he was, somewhere out there, living his life like nothing had changed. My thoughts were interrupted when the nurse, a tall woman with kind eyes, approached me. "Mr. Thomas," she said softly, "I have someone here who wants to speak with you." I stood up, my heart racing. Could it be Mark, finally showing some sign of life? Finally realizing the mess he left behind? But when the nurse stepped aside, it wasn't Mark standing there. It was my old friend, Bill. Bill and I had been close for years. He had worked with me in business, and he was the kind of guy you could count on when things got tough. But there was something in his eyes that was different today, something that made my gut twist. "Bill?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "What are you doing here?" He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I thought you might need a friend." I knew Bill too well to think he was here just for moral support. He had always been a man of action, a man who got things done, and something told me that today he had something important to tell me. "I've been looking into Mark," he said, taking a seat beside me. "The situation's worse than you think." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? How much worse can it get? He's off on a yacht while Rachel's lying here dying. I should be out there." "No," Bill interrupted. "You need to listen to me, John. This goes deeper than you think." I felt a cold chill run through me as I leaned forward. "What are you talking about?" Bill leaned in closer, lowering his voice as if making sure no one else could hear. "Rachel wasn't just some innocent victim in this. She's been planning to leave Mark for a while. And I found something that will destroy him, something he didn't think anyone knew about." My mind went blank. "What do you mean? She was planning to leave him?" Bill nodded. "For months now, Rachel's been gathering evidence of everything. The affair, the money he's been siphoning off, their joint accounts, and the shady business dealings he's involved in. She had a plan to expose him, to ruin him, before he had a chance to destroy her again." I sat back, stunned. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was an intricate web of lies and manipulation. Rachel had known all along. She had been preparing for this day, for the day when Mark would show his true colors. And now, while she lay unconscious in that hospital bed, she had left me the key to her revenge. Do you think Rachel had the right to plan her revenge? What would you do if you were in her shoes? Drop a comment below and let me know. I felt a fire ignite in my chest. My daughter wasn't just a victim. She had been playing the game, biding her time, preparing for this moment. And now it was my turn to carry out the plan. "Bill, I need everything you've got on Mark. The affair, the money, whatever dirt you found, give it to me," I said, my voice tight with resolve. He hesitated for a moment, then pulled out an envelope from his jacket. "This is just the beginning," he said, handing it over. "I've already made some calls. Mark's world is about to crashing down, but you need to be ready. He won't go down without a fight." I took the envelope, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened it. Inside was a thick stack of documents, bank statements, emails, and photos. There it was, all laid out in front of me. proof of Mark's deceit, proof of the double life he'd been living while Rachel suffered in silence. I couldn't help but feel a rush of satisfaction. Mark had no idea what was coming for him. But there was something else in the envelope that caught my attention, something I hadn't expected. It was a small, folded piece of paper with an address written on it. "What's this?" I asked, unfolding the paper. Bill looked uncomfortable. "That's the address to one of Mark's properties, the one he's been hiding under a fake name. He's been laundering money through it. If you want to hit him where it hurts, this is your chance." I looked at the address. It was an upscale property in downtown LA that Mark had been bragging about for months. It seemed like the perfect place to strike, but I needed more. I needed to make Mark feel what Rachel felt, abandoned, betrayed, and powerless. "I'm going to take everything from him," I muttered, more to myself than to Bill. Everything. What's the worst betrayal you've ever faced? Would you take action like this or walk away? Comment below with your thoughts. Bill looked at me, his eyes filled with concern. "You're walking a dangerous path, John. This is bigger than you think. Mark's not going to sit by and let you destroy him. You need to be prepared for the fallout." I nodded as my wheels in my mind were already turning. "I've spent my whole life building something, Bill, and I won't let some snake like Mark take it all the way. He's going to pay for what he's done to Rachel." As I stood up, the plan already taking shape in my mind, I realized something important. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about showing Mark that no one, no matter how powerful or rich, could get away with destroying the people they claimed to love. I made my way out of the hospital, ready to execute the plan. Mark had no idea what he was in for. The pieces were now in motion. With the evidence in hand, the next steps would reveal a side of Mark he never thought possible. But things aren't always as easy as they seem. How far would Mark go to protect himself? And what is the ultimate price for his betrayal? It was a restless night. The hospital's sterile white walls couldn't provide any comfort as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything I had learned in the last few hours. Rachel was still unconscious, and there wasn't much I could do for her at the moment except wait. But in that waiting, I felt the weight of what was coming. Bill had given me everything I needed to tear Mark's life apart. But as I sat there in the quiet of the hospital room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. Something important. A piece of the puzzle that would change everything. Mark was a dangerous man, and if I wasn't careful, this whole plan could backfire in ways I couldn't even predict. I glanced at my phone again. No new messages from Mark. No apology. No concern for Rachel's well-being. That thought alone made my blood boil. How could he just sit there, somewhere out on the water, enjoying life while Rachel fought for hers? It didn't sit right with me. It didn't sit right with me at all. How would you feel if you were in my shoes? A loved one lying in a hospital bed while the one who's supposed to care is out partying. Drop a comment and share your thoughts. The next morning, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making Mark feel the fear of losing everything. It was about showing him that he could never run from the consequences of his actions. I had the leverage now, and I wasn't about to let it slip through my fingers. I called Bill as soon as I got back to my car. "I need everything, Bill. I'm not waiting any longer. We move on Mark today." He didn't hesitate. "I'll have my guy on it, but you need to be careful, John. He's not going to go down easy." I wasn't concerned. Not anymore. My mind was already 3 steps ahead. Mark had made his fortune through manipulation, deception, and a web of lies. I would unravel that web piece by piece until he was left with nothing. I knew exactly where to hit him, where it would hurt most. His pride, his business, his sense of security. Have you ever been so angry that nothing mattered except making someone pay for what they did? What lengths would you go to for justice? Comment below with your answer. Let's talk. I made my way to Mark's hidden property in downtown LA, the one Bill had told me about. The one Mark thought was his secret haven, his safe place. I had done my homework on this place. It was upscale, flashy, the kind of property that screamed success and power. But it was all a facade. I parked down the street, far enough to remain unnoticed, but close enough to see the grand entrance of the building. My gut told me Mark would be there, hiding behind the illusion of his riches. The man thought he had it all, but what he didn't realize was that the walls were already closing in around him. I could feel the tension building with every passing minute. I walked up to the building, my footsteps echoing through the empty street. As I approached the front door, I noticed a security guard standing by the entrance. He didn't look like much, probably someone who had no idea what was going on behind the scenes, but he was in the way. I took a deep breath, then pulled out the documents I'd gathered from Bill and the investigator. They were the ones that would bring Mark down. I approached the security guard with a calm, controlled demeanor, handing him a stack of papers. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady. "I need to speak to Mark Jennings immediately. It's urgent." The guard gave me a puzzled look, then glanced at the papers. He scanned through them quickly before looking back up at me. "I can't just let anyone in. You'll have to wait." I smiled. "I'm not asking for permission. I'm here on official business. You might want to read what's in those papers." The guard hesitated for a moment, then gave a reluctant nod. "All right, but you'll need to follow protocol." I nodded, stepping past him, my mind focused entirely on what was about to happen. Inside, I knew I was walking into the lion's den. But what Mark didn't realize was that I was prepared to be the lion. I took the elevator up to the penthouse. The doors slid open to reveal an opulent space, marble floors, sleek furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows with a stunning view of the city. This was Mark's world, but it wasn't going to be for long. I knocked on the door to Mark's office and heard him yell from the inside, "Come in." When I walked in, I saw him sitting behind a massive desk surrounded by paperwork and a glass of whiskey. He looked up, and for a brief moment, there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He knew something was wrong. "John," he said, his voice tight, "what the hell are you doing here?" I didn't waste any time. I placed the stack of documents on his desk, sliding them toward him. "You're not going to get away with this, Mark. I've got everything. The bank statements, the emails, the proof of your shady business dealings. Your life is about to implode." His face went pale as he reached for the papers, his hands trembling slightly. "What are you talking about?" I leaned in closer, my voice calm but laced with a fury he couldn't comprehend. "I'm talking about your little empire, Mark. Your yacht, your fancy properties, the life you've been living while my daughter was on the brink of death. It's all over now, and I'm going to make sure you lose everything. You're not just losing money, Mark. You're losing your dignity, your reputation, your freedom." He stood up, his chair screeching across the floor. "You can't do this. You don't have any proof?" I smiled. The satisfaction of knowing what was coming flooded me. "You should have thought about that before you left Rachel to die, before you thought you could get away with everything. What would you do if you had the power to take down someone who betrayed you? Would you make them pay or walk away? Let me know in the comments." Mark's fall was just beginning, but things are about to take an even darker turn. What happens when the full extent of his betrayal is revealed? Stay tuned, this story is far from over. Don't forget to subscribe for the next twist. Mark stood there, frozen, staring at the papers in front of him. The silence between us was thick, like a storm waiting to break. His fists were clenched by his sides, his breathing shallow, as he tried to process the magnitude of what was happening. For a moment, I thought he might try to fight back. Maybe he would scream. Maybe he would try to justify everything he'd done. But instead, he just stood there, paralyzed. It was as though he couldn't believe it was happening. What would you do if the person who betrayed you was caught red-handed, trapped in their lies? Would you show mercy, or would you let them face the full weight of their actions? Drop a comment below. Let's talk. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he managed to speak. You think you can destroy me? I'm untouchable. I have connections. You can't just walk in here and take everything. I could see the panic starting to creep in. His voice, once full of arrogance, now wavered. The walls of his pristine office, the glass views, the polished furniture, it all seemed to close in on him as he realized just how much power I had over him in this moment. His empire was crumbling before his eyes, and he didn't know how to stop it. I've been around long enough to know a few things, Mark, I said, my voice calm and controlled. One of those things is that a man like you, someone who thinks they can manipulate everyone around them, always leaves a trail. And you've left a big one. I took a step closer, my eyes locking with his. You never thought you'd be caught, but you were too careless. You trusted the wrong people, you lied to the wrong person, and now it's all coming back to you. I watched as the color drained from his face, his lips pressed tightly together. For the first time, I saw him for what he really was, a man desperate to maintain the illusion of control, even when it was slipping away. But it wasn't just his business that was at risk now. It was his entire life. Everything he'd built was about to be torn down piece by piece. Have you ever watched someone's world fall apart? What did it feel like to see their mask slip? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Look, John, we can talk about this, Mark stammered. I didn't mean for it to get this far. It was a mistake. You don't understand. I cut him off. I understand more than you think. You were never the man you claimed to be. All these years, you thought you could get away with everything, lying, cheating, manipulating, but you were too greedy, too careless. I felt my pulse quicken. The rush of satisfaction was overwhelming, but it wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. Mark's eyes darted around the room as though searching for an escape, but I had him cornered. He couldn't run from this, not now, not when the evidence was right in front of him. You know what's coming, don't you? I asked, my voice lower now. The press is about to get their hands on these documents, and once they do, your precious reputation will be in tatters. All your business deals, your luxury cars, your yacht, all of it will be gone. You'll be the laughingstock of this town. Your life will be over, Mark, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Have you ever seen someone's world fall apart? Tell me, in the comments, what was your first instinct when they started to fall apart? For a moment, he just stood there, staring at me, his face pale and his jaw tight with frustration. But then something shifted. The panic in his eyes turned to rage. You think you've won, don't you? You think you're so clever, but you have no idea who you're dealing with. I'll ruin you. I'll make sure you pay for this. No one does this to me. I didn't flinch. You've already ruined yourself, Mark. You just don't see it yet. With that, I turned and walked out of the office, leaving Mark standing there consumed by the very chaos he had created. As I stepped into the elevator, I felt the weight of the moment settle in. This was just the beginning. Mark's life was about to unravel in ways he couldn't even imagine. Mark's world was crumbling faster than he could keep up with, but it wasn't over yet. As the pressure mounts, he'll make one last desperate attempt to save himself. Will he succeed, or will his lies finally catch up with him? Find out in the next chapter. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next shocking twist. The following day, I woke up early. I didn't sleep much the night before. Too many thoughts swirling in my head. But there was no time for rest now. I had made my move, and I wasn't about to stop. Mark's empire was crumbling, but I needed to make sure the final blow landed. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice for my daughter, for Rachel. She didn't deserve any of this. I had to keep the pressure on. I had to make sure Mark understood that no matter how many people he tried to call, no matter how many lawyers he hired, it was too late. The evidence I had gathered,
The proof of his betrayal, his lies, his manipulation was enough to send him into a downward spiral. But there was one thing I hadn't done yet. I needed to make sure he felt the full weight of his actions. And I wasn't just going to take him down financially. No, I was going to strip him of everything. The respect, the power, the image he had spent years building. And I was going to watch it all fall apart in front of him. If you've ever had to expose someone's lies, how did you feel watching everything they built crumble? Share your thoughts in the comments. I sat at my desk, sipping my coffee, as I went over the plan. The press release was the final piece. It had to be perfectly timed. Once the media got their hands on the documents, once they saw the truth about Mark, about the affairs, the stolen money, the corruption, it was over for him. He would be the subject of every headline. No amount of damage control could save him now. I placed a call to Bill, who had been my right hand in this. He had contacts in the press, and I needed them now. Bill, I'm ready. It's time to go public with everything. Get the press on this. It's the only way to make sure he knows just how deep he's in. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before Bill spoke. You sure about this, John? Once it's out, there's no going back. Mark will be ruined for good. I didn't hesitate. He's already ruined himself. This is the final step. We don't pull back now. After I hung up, I started drafting the press release. It had to be sharp, concise, and damning. There was no room for pity or hesitation. This wasn't about forgiveness or second chances. This was about making sure Mark understood that betrayal comes with a price that can't be paid back. I outlined everything. The fraudulent business dealings, the affair, the money laundering, the lies he had told not only to Rachel, but to everyone around him. This was the truth, laid bare for everyone to see. I included the emails, the bank records, the photos, everything that would ensure Mark could never escape the consequences of his actions. Have you ever had to expose someone's darkest secrets? What was the hardest part about it? Let me know in the comments. With the press release ready, I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was it. Mark was done. But just as I was about to hit send, I got a message. It was from Rachel's lawyer. John, we need to talk. Rachel is awake. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly dialed the number, eager to hear what had happened. Is she okay? I asked, my voice tight with anticipation. Physically, she's stable, the lawyer replied, but emotionally, she's not there yet. She remembers bits and pieces, but the doctors say it's going to take some time before she fully understands everything that's happened. I felt a pang of guilt. Rachel had been through so much, and now she had to deal with the fallout from her marriage falling apart. But that didn't change what had to be done. Mark needed to be exposed, and Rachel needed to know that her father was here, fighting for her. What would you do if you found out your child was the one caught in the crossfire of a devastating betrayal? Would you protect them at all costs, or would you let them fight their own battle? Share your thoughts below. The lawyer continued, "We're in a position to go after Mark for everything. We have the evidence you sent, and Rachel is going to sign the papers today to file for divorce." A wave of relief washed over me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about giving Rachel her life back, giving her the freedom to move on from Mark and everything he had done to her. "I'm proud of her," I said quietly. "She's stronger than I ever gave her credit for. I'll be right there." I rushed to the hospital, my mind spinning. When I walked into Rachel's room, she was sitting up in bed, looking out the window. She turned to face me as I entered, her eyes tired but steady. "Dad," she whispered. "What's happening? I can't remember much. I feel like I've been in a fog." I walked over to her, sitting down beside the bed. You've been through a lot, sweetheart, but you're awake now, and you're safe. I'm here, and I'm going to make sure Mark pays for what he's done." She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. "I should have left him a long time ago. I should have seen it coming." I shook my head. "No, this isn't on you. You did nothing wrong. He's the one who betrayed you." Her hands trembled as she reached for the papers the lawyer had sent. "I want this. I want to be free of him." And with that, the first step in taking Mark down was set into motion. Rachel had signed the papers, and it wasn't just her freedom she was claiming, it was her future. The last piece was falling into place. Now that Rachel had taken control of her life, it was time for Mark to face the consequences. But as his world started to fall apart, he wasn't going down without a fight. How far would he go to save himself? Stay tuned for the next chapter, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on the unfolding drama.
Mark thought he was invincible. After all, for years he had lived a life of privilege built on lies, manipulation, and deceit. He had the money, the power, the respect, at least the illusion of it. But as I watched from the sidelines, I knew the walls were crumbling around him. Every call he made, every move he tried to pull was another desperate attempt to keep his crumbling empire together. And I was about to show him just how far his lies could stretch before they snapped. The first hit came early the next morning, right after I'd sent the press release. I had barely finished my breakfast when the phone rang. I didn't need to check the caller ID to know who it was. It was Mark, still trying to hold on to what he thought was his. "You know what you're trying to do," he growled through the phone. "You think you can ruin me? You think you can take me down with this trash?" His voice was shaky, but there was a thin layer of anger seething beneath it. I leaned back in my chair, calm, collected. "You did this to yourself, Mark. All I did was expose the truth. You should have thought of that before you left Rachel to die alone in a hospital." There was a long silence on the other end, the tension so thick it was palpable. I could hear Mark's breathing, shallow and ragged. I knew he was furious, but deep down, I knew he also knew he was cornered. "I've already contacted my lawyers. You're making a huge mistake. You can't just do this, John. You're playing a dangerous game." I chuckled softly, the sound low and menacing. "No, Mark, you're the one who's been playing games. You just never thought anyone would call you on it. You've lost everything. Your reputation, your business, your freedom. The truth doesn't care about your lawyers." I hung up before he could respond. I knew what was coming. Mark wasn't going to take this lying down. He was too proud, too arrogant to accept the consequences of his actions without a fight. Have you ever watched someone try to fight their way out of the mess they created? How did it feel watching them spiral? Let me know in the comments below. I wasn't prepared for what happened next, though. Mark went to the press. He told them I was harassing him, that I was spreading false information to destroy his business. He painted himself as the victim, claiming that Rachel had been unfaithful, that she had used him for money, that she was the one who had manipulated everyone. He was trying to turn the narrative in his favor to make me look like the villain. He thought he could spin the truth, confuse the media, and make himself seem like the one in control. But what he didn't know was that I had already anticipated this. I had gathered more than enough evidence to shut him down, and I had a few more tricks up my sleeve. The fallibility of public perception. When the truth starts to seep through the cracks, it spreads like wildfire. How do you feel when someone tries to twist the truth to save their own skin? Would you call them out or let them dig their own grave? Drop your thoughts in the comments.
The press coverage was overwhelming, but as the story developed, something unexpected happened. The more Mark tried to defend himself, the more questions the media began to ask. How did he afford the yacht? Why was he keeping Rachel in the dark about his secret dealings? What about the money he'd been hiding? The press started digging deeper, and the more they found, the worse it got for him. I watched it all unfold on my phone as the articles piled up. Mark's business partners were turning on him, the same people who had once praised his success, now questioning his integrity. His investors were pulling their funds, unable to ignore the mounting evidence. It wasn't just his reputation that was on the line anymore. It was his entire empire. But still, he refused to give up. Mark's next move was even more desperate. He hired a PR firm, offering them a small fortune to clean up his mess. They tried to spin the narrative, focusing on his hard work and dedication to the community. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. In a last-ditch effort to save his business, Mark sent me a text. I wasn't surprised when I saw the message. "John, I'll give you whatever you want. Just stop. Let's settle this like adults. You don't have to ruin everything." I stared at the text for a long moment, the irony not lost on me. Mark had spent years ruining people's lives, manipulating everyone around him to get what he wanted. And now, when the tables were turned, he was begging for mercy. It was almost poetic. Would you show mercy in a situation like this, or would you make them feel every ounce of the pain they caused? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I wasn't going to respond. Not yet. Instead, I turned to the next phase of my plan. Mark thought money could fix everything, but it wasn't just about the money. It was about making sure he learned a lesson, one he would never forget. And the best way to do that? Hit him where it hurt the most. His pride, his power, his reputation. The moment had come. I had the press on my side, I had the proof, and now it was time to pull the trigger. I called Bill. "Get the media on the phone. It's time to end this." I didn't wait for a response. I knew what had to be done. As I hit send on the final piece of the puzzle, a detailed expose with every secret, every lie Mark had told. All I could do was watch as Mark's world began to crumble in real time. Mark's empire is about to collapse, but when the full extent of his betrayal is exposed, how far will it go to save himself? The final moments of his downfall are just ahead. Don't miss it. Subscribe now so you don't miss the last chapter in this saga. The weight of everything I had planned hung over me, but the moment Mark's world started to unravel, I felt a strange calm wash over me. It was as though everything had led to this, the final step in a long journey that had started the moment I realized my daughter had been betrayed. The truth was out, and there was no way Mark could escape now. His empire, built on lies, was crumbling before him, and I was watching it happen in real time. But what came next was even more satisfying than I had imagined. Mark, ever the arrogant fool, thought he could control the situation. He thought he could hide behind lawyers, PR firms, and threats. But he had forgotten one thing. The truth always catches up to you. I watched from the comfort of my office as the media went wild. My press release had done exactly what I needed it to do. It had planted the seeds of doubt in everyone's minds. And once the public knew about Mark's business fraud, his secret accounts, and his affair, the fallout was inevitable. People began digging deeper, and what they found was a nightmare for him. His once untouchable image was now in tatters, and his loyal supporters, they were nowhere to be found. Have you ever watched someone fall from grace? Did it feel like justice, or did you feel a twinge of guilt? Comment below with your thoughts.
At first, I couldn't believe how quickly everything was happening. Investors were pulling out, his business partners were abandoning him, and his friends were starting to distance themselves. One by one, Mark's world was coming down. The yacht was seized, the mansion was up for sale, and even his precious cars, those symbols of his power, were being repossessed. But Mark still wasn't giving up. I could almost hear his mind working, trying to come up with a plan, any plan to fix things. I knew he'd try to manipulate someone else to bail him out. He was too proud to go down without a fight. But no one would help him. The truth was out, and there was no coming back from it. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The call. It came in the middle of the afternoon, right as I was reviewing the news updates. The headline across my phone caught my eye. Mark Jennings facing criminal charges for fraud, money laundering, and corruption. My heart pounded in my chest as I clicked on the article. The charges were official now. The authorities had gathered enough evidence to bring him down. Mark had nowhere left to run. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The feeling of power, of control was overwhelming. But I knew the real payoff was coming soon. I wasn't prepared, though, for what happened next. The phone rang again. This time, it was Mark. His voice, strained and desperate, came through the line. "John, please, we need to talk. I don't care about the press or the media. I've lost everything. I'll do anything. Just stop this. Please. I can't lose everything." The sound of his voice, the fear, the panic, was almost pitiful. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. After everything he had done to Rachel, to me, to everyone he had manipulated and betrayed, this was the moment of reckoning. And I wasn't about to let up now. "No, Mark," I said, my voice cold and unfeeling. "You had everything. Your business, your wealth, your reputation, and you threw it all away. You can't come back from this. Not this time. This is the price you pay for betraying my daughter. You don't get to escape." I let the words hang in the air, waiting for him to respond. But all I heard was the sound of him choking back his emotions. "You've ruined me. I have nothing left. What do you want from me?" Do you think Mark deserves any mercy? Or is it too late for him? Let me know what you would do if you had the power to destroy someone like this. I took a deep breath before replying. What I want, Mark, is for you to realize what it feels like to lose everything, to understand the pain you've caused. And now that you've lost it all, I want you to live with the knowledge that the only person responsible for this fall is you. Mark didn't say anything. I could hear him on the other end, struggling to regain control of his emotions. But it was too late. The damage had been done, and I was the one who had delivered the final blow. 2 days later, I received the news I had been waiting for. Mark had been arrested. The authorities had seized his assets and placed him under investigation for a range of charges, including fraud, money laundering, and corruption. His reputation was destroyed. His wealth, the thing he had clung to for so long, was gone. And Rachel, though still recovering, was free of him. It was over. Mark had lost everything. But in the midst of his fall, I couldn't help but reflect on the toll it had taken. I had fought for Rachel. I had done what needed to be done, but as I looked back, I knew something important. Revenge, in all its glory, doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes, it leaves a bitter taste. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. But what I did feel was a sense of justice. And that was enough. With Mark's life shattered and the dust beginning to settle, what's next for the protagonist and Rachel? How does life look when everything has changed, and what lessons have been learned along the way? Find out in the final chapter, where all the pieces come together. Don't forget to subscribe to get the last twist in this saga. The world was a very different place for Mark now. What had once been an empire of luxury and deceit had turned into a crumbling house of cards. His business was in tatters, his reputation completely ruined, and the life he had so carefully crafted was now a distant memory. As for Rachel, she was free, but it hadn't been an easy road. I sat on the porch of my house, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with hues of red and gold, the quiet evening air carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass from a nearby neighbor's yard. The calm was a stark contrast to the storm that had raged just days ago. But now, everything felt different. I had won. We had won. But victory never felt like I imagined it would. Have you ever felt that bittersweet taste after achieving something you thought would make you feel victorious? What was it? Drop a comment below and let me know how you handled it. Mark had been arrested, his assets seized, and his lies exposed for the world to see. But as I watched Rachel begin to heal, physically, emotionally, it became clear that the real victory wasn't in his fall. The real victory was in her reclaiming her life, her sense of self. She had been a victim, but now she was free to be who she was meant to be all along. And that, more than anything, was what I had fought for. Rachel had stayed with me for a few days after everything happened, and I could see the change in her. The shock of what Mark had done still weighed heavily on her, but the anger was fading. She was slowly finding her footing again, and it was in those quiet moments when we talked about the future that I saw the spark of hope in her eyes once more. "I'm starting to feel like myself again, Dad," she said one evening as we sat together at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee between us. "I'm starting to feel like I'm breathing again, like I can finally take a deep breath without looking over my shoulder, wondering what he's going to do next." I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. "You're stronger than you think, Rachel. You've always been strong. You just had to see it for yourself. Do you think strength comes from overcoming betrayal or from learning to trust again? Let me know in the comments." Her eyes softened as she looked out the window, the faintest smile curling at the corners of her lips. I think I can finally start moving forward. I have you, Dad, and I have myself. I just want to live a life that's mine, one that's not defined by what Mark did to me." I nodded, proud of the woman my daughter had become. "You'll get there. You're already on your way." And I meant it. Mark's betrayal had shaken us both to the core, but in the end, it was just the push Rachel needed to reclaim her life. For the first time in a long while, I felt hope for her future. As the days turned into weeks, the media frenzy around Mark eventually died down. There were still occasional headlines about his arrest, his downfall, but the public's attention had moved on. Mark's name was tarnished, his reputation in ruins, and no matter how hard he tried to climb out of the hole he had dug for himself, there was no coming back. The people who had once looked up to him now saw him for who he really was, a fraud. But that wasn't enough for me. I needed to make sure Mark learned the real lesson. I needed to show him that betrayal had consequences that couldn't be escaped with money or manipulation. And that's when the final, most satisfying moment arrived. I had been working with Rachel's lawyer, gathering the last bits of leverage we needed to make sure Mark could never harm her again. We filed the papers, and within a week, the court ruled in Rachel's favor. She got everything. Her share of their assets, the house, everything she deserved after years of abuse. Mark was left with nothing. The final chapter of his life had been written, and I was the one who had penned it. The last piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. The next day, I met with Rachel outside of the courthouse. She was smiling, her face glowing with relief and newfound confidence. "I never thought it would feel this freeing," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I could feel free again after everything he did, but now it's like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I'm not carrying his mistakes anymore." I put my arm around her, pulling her into a hug. "You don't have to, sweetheart. It's over. You've won." Have you ever had a moment when you felt like everything had changed, when you finally let go of the weight of someone else's mistakes? Tell me about it in the comments below. We stood there together for a moment, watching as people walked by, their lives continuing on, oblivious to the battle we had just won. But it felt right. Rachel had won her freedom, and I had won something more precious. Peace of mind, knowing that she was safe, that she was no longer living in the shadow of Mark's lies. But there was one last thing to take care of. I needed to make sure that Mark understood just how deep his betrayal had cut. So I reached out to him one last time, sending a single, simple message. You thought you could take everything from Rachel. You thought you could destroy her, but she's stronger than you'll ever be. You lost, Mark. You'll never take anything from us again. I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't get one. Mark had nothing left to say. And so, it ended. But for Rachel and me, the journey was just beginning. The lesson was clear. Betrayal comes with consequences. But in the end, the truth always wins. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever fought for someone you love, you know the strength it takes to keep going. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice, strength, and resilience. And if you've been through something like this, let me know in the comments. What did you learn from it?